be seated, and the record will show the presence of all the jurors, counsel, and the defendant. And as soon as you're ready, Mr. Jetty, you can continue with your closing argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. We left off with speaking about Daniel, the second victim and the eyewitness. That's what happened. What Daniel is not part of a drug organization. He's not. He doesn't work for the cartel. He does not. 6th grade education. And he knew Gabrielle for about a year. There's a picture of him in testimony. I'm talking about consistent statements. AK-47 shot. Red horse. He also nailed it on how the victim died. Clutching his chest, arm up. And that is the picture we see of Gabriel. They crossed. No weapons or drugs. No one in the group had weapons or drugs. No one. Returned to Mexico, and the shots were fired. These are 2 unarmed migrants heading back to Mexico. Shots coming from the defense property. It tells you shots were coming from the right-hand side, and the horse is saving his life. Heard 8 to 10 shots. There were 9 shell casings found. Consistency. And he is scared. Being shot at with an AK-47 is serious. Seeing your friend die in front of you is serious. Grabbed his chest and said, "I'm hit." Agent Heredia, first on scene at 2:40. No people, no tracks, looking for the defendant. Remember, this was an active shooter response. Saw no rifles, no backpacks, no drugs. And the defendant was calm. Kelly said, when he met up with him, he said that 5 to 7 people were carrying bundles. He went from 5 people to 10 to 15, back down to 5 to 7. It never mentions, with Agent Heredia, never mentions he said he was shot at. Never mentions he was shot at. Never mentions he saw a weapon. Never mentions a weapon was pointed at him. He's calm. Never mentions he even fired that weapon. It's 10 minutes after this shootout event. Unreal? Miss Kelly saw 5 armed men. Kelly went after them, heard 4 shots. Those are the 4 shots, 4 of the 9 shots by the defendant. The defendant said, "This baby is always by the door." And that's the AK-47, which is behind the bedroom door, hanging up on a coat rack behind a sweatshirt. That's the same AK-47 that he always keeps by the door. And he says they were possibly carrying rifles. Officer asked, did the armed men shoot at him? Didn't know what direction they shot. Justification instructions. There's a litany of those in your packet. You got one for use of physical force, one for self-defense, one for use of deadly physical force, defense of a third person, and defense of premises. That's your homework. I'm going to tell you, cheat sheet is always a reasonable person standard. So when you see 2 unarmed migrants walking southbound beyond 2 fence lines, and you take your AK-47, you walk out and don't say a word, point it at them, and you shoot, would that be what a reasonable person would do in that situation? The answer has to be no. The answer has to be no. No evidence of any armed gunmen. No one found on BP footage. No foot traffic. No other shell casings. And they used I think they used up to 3 metal detectors on 2 different days. No other shell casings found. No one heard the mysterious shot, the made-up shot the defendant now claims started this entire event. He has to give you something. They got to give you something to justify why he shoots 9 times at a migrant. He has to give you something. It gives you this, quote, mysterious shot that even his wife does not hear. No evidence of drugs, guns, a struggle, robbery, anything. And when the cartel gets involved, they leave things messy, they also don't leave evidence. No evidence of any rip crew in the area. And you heard Agent Marcel on the stand. Not in the past 10 years. Not in the past 10 years. No justification for stepping on your patio with an AK-47, not giving a warning, and shooting 9 times at 2 men who are southbound away from your property. No justification at all. Reasonable doubt? You got jury instruction on that? What I want to talk about is your common sense and experience. We're in this is a magical area we're in. This is what democracy is about, sitting in a jury, listening to a case, and determining the guilt and innocence of an individual. This is what our democracy is about. But you still use your common sense you use in everyday life. You still use it. I'm going to give you an analogy. I think the judge used the analogy for direct and circumstantial evidence with the rain outside. And he told you if you didn't see it, you have no direct evidence of it. If you go outside, there's circumstantial evidence of rain. I want to use the same thing for reasonable doubt. We're sitting inside this courtroom, and you go outside, the facade's all wet, the pavement's all wet, people are carrying umbrellas. You were here all day long for the past 4 weeks, but you're here all day long. You don't hear it rain, you don't see it rain, you don't smell it rain, you don't smell anything. You don't smell the bushes and the wonderful odor, you don't smell any of that. However, is it beyond a reasonable doubt it rained? Yes. Is it possible that a truck came by, a fire truck came by and sprayed the facade and the ground? Yeah, it's possible. That's a ridiculous doubt. Use that same standard here. That same standard. There is no bandits out there threatening the defendant. None. Facts again, Gabriel and Daniel were shot at. Gabriel is dead. Killed by a high-powered weapon, an AK-47. Entry wound, right side, exit wound, chest, lines up perfectly with the defendant's property. We're calling the wheat from the chaff here. Defendant's words, inconsistent. Defendant's words actually were consistent with some of the physical evidence. Shot 9 times. Eventually he says he shot 9 times. And now we have shell casings. Consistent there. And Daniel's words, always consistent with the physical evidence. Steps out, no verbal warning. Defendant shot his AK-47 9 times. Shell casings found. Ejection pattern consistent with what Brunel did on a test of that same weapon, with the same rounds. Position and orientation of the body lines up with the defendant's home. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to come back second time, I'm going to find him guilty of secondary murder. But you also can decide, if you're not satisfied with secondary murder, you can consider manslaughter. And if not satisfied with either secondary murder or manslaughter, you can consider negligent homicide. And find him guilty for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon against Daniel. I'm going to leave you with this. Detective Ianza says in the interview, the moral of the story is you shot and someone is dead? And his answer is yes. That's all I have.